One.
Hello, my name is Jessica, and today our group is going to teach you a little bit of number one, be proactive, and how that you can incorporate this into your everyday life. Being proactive is the first step to achieving the private victory. Take a minute to imagine yourself as a positive, strong, and proactive person. Imagine how conversations and meetings would become more productive and more satisfying. Imagine seeing the good in a situation and in other people, and how much better and happier you could feel about yourself and others. Reactive people think based on impulse and can be very negative and sometimes say things. They may even play the victim and use words like can't, won't, never, or ruined. On the other hand, proactive people think based on values and positivity. They tend to use more words like can, will, and what are my options. Think for a minute about the negative situations that occur in your life. Maybe it was a fight with a coworker or a friend. How did you react? Were you proactive or were you reactive? Every day we are faced with many chances to decide whether we will act proactively or reactively. I know that in my life I sometimes forget to push the pause button and think before I react. I know that in my everyday life I encounter this so many times daily. If my son does something wrong, I have to decide in just a split second whether to act proactively or calmly or negative and reactive. He will probably respond better if I listened to him and if I were calm and relaxed. If I just started yelling at him out of impulse, he would probably not listen as well and probably not understand. Now think of all of the things in your life that you can change to become more proactive. Now that I've taught you a little bit about being proactive versus reactive, here's Joseph to talk about the benefits of being proactive.
Thank you, Jessica. So, as you just stated, my name is Joseph, and I'll be telling you about the benefits of being proactive. So, one thing good about being proactive is that proactive people tend to take responsibility for their own actions. And a benefit of this is, when something doesn't go your way or an obstacle comes up, rather than it setting you back, you're going to go ahead and be able to get past it. This is going to allow you to take ownership of when a situation goes wrong. And rather than putting the blame on somebody else or denying it or lying and saying it wasn't you, you need to take ownership for what you did. And by doing this, people will respect you more. In addition to this, when you start taking responsibility for your own actions, it's going to cause you to start thinking it before you start acting. And when you start thinking before you start acting, you start operating on logic rather than emotion. And by doing so, you're going to make less impulsive decisions and more smarter ones that you're less likely to regret. And I think the biggest benefit of being proactive is being a happier person, because by being a happier person, it comes with immense benefits. One of which I think is the ability to bounce back after something bad happens. So when something doesn't go your way, you can look at this obstacle as a speed bump rather than a roadblock, and not letting it stop you, but finding a way to get around it. In addition to this, happy people tend to be less offended. So say somebody calls you a bad name or doesn't agree with what you think. Rather than you taking it to heart and being super upset and dwelling on it, you're able to just go ahead and address it and then let it go. And instead of getting emotionally invested in it, you just go ahead and take it for what it is and then don't worry about it anymore. And lastly, happier people tend to worry about what they can control and less of what they can't. So rather than sweating the small stuff, you're going to go ahead and focus on what you can rather than what you can't control. Recently, I actually read an article that talked a lot about centennials and people who made it to close to 100 years of age or made it past. And one thing that they noticed amongst all of them was that they had a carefree, easygoing, and positive life. And one thing that I was able to read from the aging and mental health thing said that according to Cato and others, therefore, tendency toward positive attitudes and effect seems to represent a protective factor against depression, disability, and pain through engaging in positive coping strategies and healthy behaviors. Specifically, attitudes have been reported to predict future behavior by a number of studies. So this article talked about some scientific proof that being a positive person and being proactive actually had health benefits as well. For example, these elderly people, they displayed positive attitudes and a proactive life, and they were able to fight off depression, disability, and pain. So this is proof that by being a proactive and happier, more positive person, there's health benefits and longevity to it as well. This makes me think about when I was a sophomore in high school. And I remember I joined the wrestling team while I was taking a lot of tough classes. And originally, I thought it was a great idea, but I soon realized that it was a lot of work. And this all caught up to me. And so I was taking a lot of classes and getting a lot of homework and having to go to practice. And I was just trying to play catch up all the time. I was letting assignments come at me and trying to, do missed assignments, trying to catch up on work, doing extra credit and things like that to just try to get my grades up. I remember my coach asked us to go ahead and give a grade report. And at the time, I had a 2.0 and I was failing the class. I thought just because I had a 2.0, I'd be okay to wrestle, but he was furious. He thought they were terrible grades and he actually told me to get out of his face. But I took this as a lesson and I decided to do something about it. So I went from having a 2.0 to end up having an honor roll. And I went with really, really bad grades to having pretty good grades. And all I did was start being proactive rather than reactive. So instead of falling behind and trying to play catch up on my work, I looked ahead and started studying for tests and, getting ahead on assignments. If I knew I had a tournament coming up or a dual meet, I'd do the work ahead of time rather than trying to turn it in late and ask for extra credit. So rather than being swamped with paperwork, I started getting ahead and planning. And so not only did this affect my life in a positive way with school, but I became a better wrestler. And I felt like this spilled over into my everyday life. And I just became like a confident, more happy person. And so there's immense benefits to being proactive. These are just a few. But now that I've told you all about the benefits of being a proactive person, here's Catherine to tell you more about being proactive.
Thank you, Joseph. So my name is Catherine, and I'm going to start off my portion on the circle of control and no control, as pictured here on the right side of the slide. This is a really good diagram because it pictures us as individuals in the center, and it represents the only things that we can control, such as how we respond to what happens to us, our attitudes, and ourselves in general. On the other hand, the larger outer circle that surrounds us represents the many other things that affect us and are out of our control, like the weather, our ethnicities, and how other people choose to treat us, whether that be positively or negatively. Regardless, the best thing for us to do is to stop worrying about what we can or can't change, because it's a waste of our time and energy to do so. Being reactive can be detrimental because it makes you focus on negative things that can make you feel bad about yourself and like a powerless victim. What you can do to avoid that is to be a proactive person by focusing on yourself, what you can influence, and just doing what makes you happy. For instance, on gloomy and rainy days like the ones we had last month in February, rather than spend your time wishing it was sunny outside or being mad about having to change your plans, think about the benefits of the rain for us, for our plants and animals, and just our environment as a whole. This is also a good opportunity for you to do something different if you tend to go out a lot, like spend some extra time with your family or cook a homemade meal. Personally, I spend my time studying or playing with my dogs. You can also turn your setbacks into triumphs. Like what W. Mitchell, a successful millionaire, said, "It's not what happens to you in life, it's what you do about it." Despite his physical disabilities, he doesn't let that hold him back, and he still does everything he can to live his life to the fullest. You can stay positive too and believe in yourself. Don't give up when things don't go your way. Remember that you can't control everything and it's not your fault. You can learn from your experiences and do something different next time to possibly get a better result that you want. For example, we've all had that test, presentation, or paper that we worked really hard for, but didn't get the grade that we hoped we would get. Maybe it was because you had a new professor, or this is a new subject that you weren't familiar with. But now that you know what's expected of you, you can think about what you need to improve on and be more confident in doing well on the next assignment. So don't give up, and keep in mind that one grade doesn't define you. We all have our strengths and weaknesses. There's still time for you to raise your overall grade in the class, and you can always ask for your instructor for help, ask about extra credit opportunities, or find a tutor who has had the class before. So now that I've told you what you can do when you encounter things out of your control, Sabrina will now tell you ways to help you change your reactive habits and ultimately be a more proactive person.
All right, thanks, Catherine. So my name's Sabrina, and I'm going to be talking about how to grow your ability to be proactive. So just like how strength training takes time, you have to slowly build your ability to be proactive. Like the saying goes, the first step in succeeding at something is failing. When you see that you're making excuses or being reactive, make a conscious effort to be more proactive the next time, and then time after that, until making the proactive decision is more of a reflex than an effort. To help you build your proactive muscles, you have to keep a positive attitude in the face of your setbacks. So this brings us to can-do and no-can-doers. The difference between can-do and no-can-do mindsets is like night and day. Imagine there are two people. Both are asked to come up with a way to fix a company's failing business model. Person A immediately volunteers their idea, saying they may not be experienced, but they're confident that they can come up with something within the week. Person B is told to share their ideas, and they complain that business models don't just make themselves overnight, and that the possible risks of most models will outweigh the pros in the long run. It's obvious from the scenario that person A is a can-do individual. They decide to speak up first and take initiative. They're confident despite their inexperience, and they act on the situation. Person B is a no-can-do individual. They're told to speak. They think about the problems and barriers, and they make excuses. Even though person B most likely had prior business experience, their attitude in the situation may have cost them the opportunity. Another habit of proactive people is thinking before you speak. There's only one thing in life that you can control, and it's yourself and your actions. Keep in mind your human tools when you're thinking of your response to a situation. Self-awareness. I can look outside myself and acknowledge what I say and do. Conscience. My inner voice can help me decide right from wrong. Imagination. I can envision new possibilities. Willpower. I have the power to choose my future. Now, it's important to note that people are born with disadvantages in our current society. Whether it be race, gender, sexual orientation, religion, or a number of other factors, it can be difficult to make your way in life. But remember the circle of control. You have no control over the circumstances that you were born into. And instead of letting society tell you that you can't do this or you can't do that because of the way you are, use your human tools and a positive attitude to turn an impossible situation to your favor. In conclusion, it can be difficult to always choose to be proactive. Being reactive or acting impulsively is a lot easier and much more satisfying than thinking through your response and acting with your conscience. Make sure to take responsibility for your actions and learn from your mistakes. Use the circle of control to understand what you can and can't control, and think through your human tools when you encounter a situation where it can be difficult to be proactive. By becoming more proactive, you will become happier, and you'll be able to clear your mind of worries that you can't control. And just remember, becoming proactive will take a long time to accomplish, and even when you do, you won't always make the proactive decision. Try to keep a positive mindset, and remember, practice makes perfect. So that's habit 1, being proactive. Thank you for listening, and we hope this presentation will help you to start being more proactive in your life.